Good morning and welcome to the Financial Pillars All About the Money podcast presented by Our Neutral Voices Media. Our show is all about helping our audience understand money, mindsets, and tap into the economic knowledge that builds financially secure individuals, families, and communities. So whether you're tuning into our show to learn about budgeting, building credit, investing, or starting your own business, we're here to break down the knowledge in a real and relatable way. I'm Ryan Leopard. I'm a private banker with Star Financial Bank. On the set today, my man JJ.
Go ahead.
We're going to go to Terrence first.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, glad to be back, Ryan. Again, just to recap, I am a universal business banker at Greenway Bank located downtown Fort Wayne.
I'm JJ Foster with Lake City Bank, mortgage originator. Good to be here, sir.
Awesome. Love the suit today.
Thank you.
You're shining red.
Thank you. Hey, man, it's, Valentine's in June. How about
Valentine's in June. There you go.
I never heard that before.
So we got a special event going on tonight, the second part in our financial youth sense seminars, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 6 to 8, Fort Wayne Urban League. Again, as he says, the second part. First segment went really well. We had Mr. Terrence led a great segment for the young people. We expect the same energy coming. Got a lot of good help from our different bankers. Actually, Lake City Bank we have a heavy presence there this evening, but we will feed the young people not just information and knowledge, but we'll physically get fed. So come on out, get your sons, your daughters there. Come on out if you want to come and stick around. You can learn some things as well.
Gotcha. So topic of tonight's conversation, making the most of income and your spending and kind of savings plan. Is that kind of the idea?
That's the idea. That's what we talked about. I know we had production meetings and all that good stuff, and that's what we plan on talking. But you guys both in the banking world, tomorrow's a holiday, and what holiday is that?
Juneteenth, of course.
Juneteenth.
Yes. Juneteenth. So I think it's important that we discuss Juneteenth and the relevance of that holiday, and actually in light of things that are going on, in the climate of our country today. So I'd like to discuss that because a lot of people we were talking come in. You got the day off, and people, what is Juneteenth?
Why are you closed?
Why are you closed? Why am I off? What is that? But we have to understand Juneteenth, June 19th. 1865, you think about it, it was people still enslaved. And if we all know our history, we know the Emancipation Proclamation came about 1863. So think about it, 1863, you're free, but 2 years later, people are still enslaved and in bondage. There was no social media, nobody picking up the phone and, hey, man, y'all know so people literally was living in bondage 2 years after which they had to be.
Gotcha. Yeah. With both of you gentlemen, I mean, is Juneteenth something you've always been familiar with as a holiday? I know for me, it wasn't. It was only probably maybe 5 years ago, and I can remember the exact date and time and why, it became familiar to me. But
from my current understanding, it was not something that I was familiar with. Also, in a sense of the education system did not teach me about Juneteenth. It was something that I learned about via other family members, friends, just doing my own research, of course. That was until, 2021 when it was actually passed as a federal holiday. That is when I actually did my deep dive into the research. I looked into the events, the importance of it, and that's when I realized just because the 13th Amendment and the Emancipation Proclamation had been passed, just because Abraham Lincoln had so-called freed these slaves, the Confederacy went to war with the United States of America to pretty much abolish slavery. Even with all the abolitionists and everything like that, slavery still was not over. So that is why Juneteenth is more critical and more important to me now, because just because they did all the necessary steps to essentially free these slaves weren't necessarily free. So having Juneteenth is the absolute finite ending of slavery. It is the major celebration that African Americans and Black Americans have needed for years and years on end. Just because, we have 1776 where the United States of America celebrated their independence from, Great Britain, African Americans were still in slavery. So it essentially wasn't independence for us until Juneteenth came around. So that's why I consider it more important as a holiday today, now that I know more about it now.
Yep. JJ?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I mean, again, even when slavery was quote unquote abolished, whether it's Juneteenth, whether it was the Emancipation Proclamation, there were still plenty of mechanisms that were put in place, for African Americans, that barriers and challenges that were put in place to deliberately keep them, at a disadvantage. So, you asked when I heard about Juneteenth, I think I might have been in college, which, is kind of, again, that's late. And when we talk about the teaching of Black history, and, a lot of people don't like the term Black history. And, if you think about where we're at right now, they're trying to do away with the terms Black history and calling it divisive and things. But at the end of the day, you're right. If we don't even call it Black history, it's all a part of American history. It happened here. That's history. Why would we not want to discuss it? Why can't we discuss
that special spotlight that it deserves, right?
Correct. Yeah. And everybody, anybody that's that's intelligent, the first thing that they teach you is you have to know about your history, so you learn from your past and not to make the same mistakes over. So, how can you do away with that?
Yeah. I know for myself personally, I think it was probably 2020, 2021, working in corporate America, and get a message say, hey, we got a half day tomorrow. And my first thought was like, what the hell do we have a half day tomorrow? What is that? Well, it's Juneteenth. Can't say I didn't miss an email earlier on and a couple months beforehand telling us about it, but that was my first insight into what is Juneteenth, and then from there, next year it was a whole day off, and it's become, more and more. So I don't know if that was just me and my ignorance and not being in the know on that, or how, where that come about. Because I never learned about that at school, never heard about that.
Yeah. And it's funny when you put it that way, and it kind of ties together. The reason we didn't know about it, because, what you call status quo, what we're taught in schools. Hey, this is the curriculum. This is what you're taught. This is how it's going to be. So it leads me to something else that's kind of, that we're trying to do away with, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if there's no diversity and we've got a curriculum, this is how we're going to teach things, and you have somebody over here, ancestors that know about Juneteenth and this, whatever happened, they're not included at the table to make these decisions. How is anything going to change? Whether it's what's being taught, whether it's how things are going to be done. That's the importance of, including and being diverse.
Absolutely, and I do agree. Of course, I still remember how Black history was taught when I was in school. And essentially, they only taught us Black history during February, Black History Month. Of course, they touched on the major names like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Nat Turner, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and Rosa Parks. That's pretty much it. They maybe talk about the Civil Rights Movement and the March on Selma and the Montgomery bus boycott, but they don't deep dive into all of Black history. There's so much that I didn't even know about my own ancestors because I had to physically go out and find myself because the education system failed me on teaching me my own history. I will say for a fact, the more that I learn about my history, the more I start to understand the struggles that African Americans have gone through here in America. And it's kind of saddening that as a whole, I feel we should all be working towards the same goal of unity and progressing as a whole. But as of right now, everything feels like it's more divided than it's ever been. So having Juneteenth come around to help ground me and re-cement me in who I am and who my people are, I think it's a great holiday to have. I'm thankful that the holiday is there to remind me of who I am and everything that my people have gone through to reach where they are today.
Mm-hmm. Resiliency is a word.
Absolutely.
It teaches about the resiliency of your folks, our folks, as you say. So.
So what's your thoughts on how important it is for that kind of stuff to be discussed in a school setting as opposed to like your family setting, right? Because I know you said you're not being taught that in school, but being passed down from generation to generation, in the Black household. What do you think about that? Like the responsibility there?
I think it's great that majority of stories, history, or any transgressions that have taken place in the past that are passed down mouth to mouth from family members, that is the raw truth. It's not adulterated, it's not changed, it's not fixed to make it seem like it was less brutal than what it actually was. There are times where I've spoken to my grandparents, great-grandparents, and they've told me some of the things that they experienced as a child, just growing up with how they were treated due to their skin color, etc., things like that. Of course, not trying to get too deep into the topic. Hearing it from my people makes it that much real. It makes me feel it that much more. It makes me want to support everything that my people have gone to that much more. When I read about it in a textbook, I know things have been clipped. I know information has been changed. I know some words have been taken out. They want you to know the good part, like, oh, African Americans did this and they fought for that, and there was no violence. They're not going to talk to you about the Rodney King riots. They're not going to talk to you about that. They're not going to talk about the amount of people that were hanging from trees. They're not going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about how the KKK used to hunt down African Americans for fun, for sport. They're not going to talk about the burning of crosses on front lawns. They're not going to do that because they don't want to paint themselves as the enemy. And I understand that completely. But if you're going to teach me history, don't just tell me the colorful parts. I want to know the entirety of it. Every single atrocity, every bad thing that has taken place. It is a part of who we are. And the thing is, you're not supposed to hate that. It is a point in time that things did happen. You're supposed to take that as a learning experience, and you're supposed to move on from that. You're supposed to better yourself. There should be no such thing as retrogressing back to the past where we're okay with those things happening again.
And again, it goes to what I talk about, being inclusive. If you're learning, your parents teach you things and they're passing it down to you and it stays in this lane. His parents are teaching him things and passing it down, his lane. And you guys never come together. How do you understand his perspective? How do you learn from what he went through? So if you're out in the community and your parents are teaching you certain sets of values and your history, and your neighbors, they had the same and this, that, the other. So then you come together in a work environment. Now what are you doing? You bounce it off. We got the same values, same thought processes. You have no idea. Like you said, do you ever learn about Juneteenth? When would Juneteenth come up? Would you ever learn about? You heard the passion he has. Would you ever understand where any of that's coming from? No, because everybody has the same ideas, the same thought process. If you bounce it, hey, that's a good idea. Never would you consider that, man, that's not a good idea because this gentleman experienced this over here. So again, it's something that gets at me, and we're a financial literacy show. So if you have a businesses that thrive are businesses that are diverse, that are inclusive for that very reason. And we're bringing in different perspectives from male, female, black, white, Asian, Indian. And now, you have an idea like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. That doesn't go over well. This is how, Asians feel or think. So now you have some insight, you have some perspective to do things collectively as a whole, get ideas that's going to be better and move your company forward.
So from my knowledge, when I found out about what Juneteenth was just a few years back, is that when it became an actual federal holiday, or when did we start recognizing that from the federal level?
Joe Biden in 2021 actually was the one that officially made Juneteenth a federal holiday.
Gotcha.
So until then, it was just kind of word of mouth type of date.
Yeah, like I said, in my world, never heard about it from that. So, but was that something that was always within your guys' lives, families, communities, things like that you've known about, right?
No, again, I mean, there was a certain amount of education that goes on from both sides. I mean, you say in our guys' lives, no. Hey, I'm here to tell you, not all African Americans know their history. So they know what's been taught to them in the education system. So not everybody has that foresight, that has that legacy and passed down. So we were just learning about it collectively as a group. And what you would have is certain organizations that understood their history. They may have some celebrations and things of that nature. Shout out to, Carl Johnson, Kwaku. I know he was relevant in our community. He always was bringing something, celebrating African history and Juneteenth and doing different things. So he educated a lot of young people and people in our community on things that weren't mainstream and people had no idea about. Gotcha.
So you got Juneteenth tomorrow. You said, 1865? Was that the date?
Correct.
Right? So where have we come from 1865 to 2025? What progress have you felt that we've been making?
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to say, you say what progress?
We haven't solved the problem in
here's the reality of it.
Years.
There's still issues, but again, we had an administration that understood and put things in place to try to level the playing field, to try to some wrongs that have been established, let's make them right. The stuff, it's out there, it's documented. Again, keeping it financial. I'm in the banking industry. You guys in the banking industry. We all know the term CRA, Community Rights Act, right? That is there were lending situations and mechanisms that were put in place to keep African Americans down. So now, as you put programs or you try to create products to help, again, level the playing field, to make things more on their side, these things are being rolled back. These things are being eliminated. Special purpose credit programs, lending to minorities in business. These things are all being rolled back and turned into a negative. So whatever progress that was made with these programs, again, the majority, you're always still gonna have issues. So there was that struggle, but to roll those things back, that sets us back. It's like, again, we're going backwards, not forward.
Yeah. With that being said, it definitely feels like there was progress being made. It felt like we were slowly becoming more unified. It felt like that equality that African Americans have for so many centuries been sought after. It felt like it was within grasp. But to essentially have an administration that blatantly and loudly in your face lets you know that you are not anywhere near the equality that you think you have, and just to show you that, I'm just going to show you just how much you don't matter to me. So it's disheartening and kind of sickening to me personally when I look at all the great African American inventors, historians, people that have fought in wars for this country, etc., gone out of their way to bridge the gap so that there wouldn't be a divide between, white and black people or other minorities. To have that pretty much rolled back, to pretty much have it all wiped away, it's disgusting personally, because why would you want to erase the great things that other people have done to help make this place a better place than what it was before? Again, if we are all working towards the same goal of unity and pretty much progressing ourselves to be the best race of human beings that we can possibly be, why would you be more focused on deterring that and pretty much destroying every single foundation that has been built for everybody to build bridges together? If your entire goal is to just burn those bridges down and recreate that separation that we so-called just essentially just finished dealing with.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, I know we live in a time where people want to dispute facts. Everything is an opinion. You say an opinion, that becomes a fact. Or how do you know that? So when I mention mechanisms, again, just kind of glossing over stuff, they're redlining is a term that, again, I know you guys in banking we've heard of and we've discussed, but there's people like, what's redlining? Is that a thing? And it literally is, what was a mechanism put into place to hold black people down. They could only loan them money in certain areas of town. There's different codes that were out there. African Americans were faced with higher interest rates just for sheerly being black. Unfavorable terms, weren't allowed to live in certain areas. You think about the boom of America. There were suburbs, the rise of suburbs coming up. But yet, if you were black, you wanted to go by the suburbs, you can go down to the library right now. You can look, there's laws. No Negroes allowed. I use that term. No Negroes allowed to live in this area. If you sell to a Negro, if you rent to a Negro in certain parts of town, it was illegal. It was illegal. They would go and as he talked about, burning crosses in landlord and people that sold, So understand, this stuff is real. And when you have the federal government obviously stepping in and recognizing it and understanding and looking that a lot of the so-called plight of black folks and other people where they live and their conditions, to understand that it is by an intentional nature, it's eye-opening. And for people to just sit back and say, oh, no, they don't want to look at it, that was then, that doesn't fly. We got to understand something has to be done. I've often used an example. I had a friend, we sat down and talked, and you guys know I got friends both sides of the track. These are conversations that we have. And he said, educate me. He said, I hear this type of stuff, I don't want to believe it exists, but I know you're not a liar and I trust you. And like I told him, me and him were the same age. And back when we had this discussion, I asked him, I said, hey, your dad went to college, didn't he? He said, yeah. I said, your grandfather, he went to college? He said, yeah. I said, now check this out. My dad, if he was to go to college, there's only certain schools that he can go to. Had to be, you hear about HBCUs. Same thing with my grandfather. There's only certain schools that they can go to. So you're talking about your options are limited, your choices are limited. And again, we are of the same age. So when you talk about housing, it's the exact same thing. When we talk about ghettos and slums, I mean, go look at the history and how those things started. I've mentioned on this show before the GI Bill. And the GI Bill is one of the biggest factors in the wealth gap that exists between African Americans and white people. Millions of soldiers went to war. You come out. We all know the GI Bill. You get your education paid for. You get housing, all that. So as an African American, you come out. You come back. Like I said, your schools were limited. Not all the schools accepted the GI Bill. And then as far as housing, they built up these suburbs. Again, Levittown is an example. A lot of soldiers, they got homes in Levittown. Black soldiers went out there to get the same benefit. Weren't allowed. They had to go live and rent from somebody in a tenement in some subpar conditions, pay double the rent, and have nothing to show for your money. So now you think about it. That generation of people, the house is paid off.
What time period are you talking about with this?
Coming out, let's say World War II. You coming back, guys, benefiting. So once you use that house, I put the house to put Ryan through college. And then, you graduate. Now the house is paid off. Now, Ryan, you a grown man. What do you got? You got that house is yours. You got a nice piggy bank. You got all that equity. African Americans, they weren't afforded that same opportunity.
Gotcha. So where does that bring us to today? Would you agree that African Americans have more opportunity today? Back then, we've made progress from that standpoint, or are we still dealing with the same stuff?
I mean, anytime you don't have laws in the books that deliberately say, hey, you can't rent, you can't sell to somebody, that's progress.
Yeah.
But on that same token, because that law doesn't exist, how many people out there still have it in their heart or in their head, I'm not renting this person, I just can't. I'll give you an example right now. When I was at the Fort Wayne Housing Authority, and again, we got actually a luncheon this afternoon, but they still deal with the stigma, Section 8 rentals. They got to get creative when people get a voucher because you got people saying, I'm not renting them. Mm-hmm. Those people tear up your house. Those people do this, that, the other. That's the stereotype that's out there. So they they have to do seminars and things, bring in landlords and educate them. The reality is these folks, are taking care of homes. They want to be homeowners. They take pride in their living, and you actually have an agency that's backing you that makes sure like that rent is guaranteed payment. Mm-hmm. So
for my ignorance, explain Section 8 housing.
Section 8 is folks that's income based that you can get a voucher to live, where the government, HUD, Housing Authority, pays for your rent based off of, number of kids you have, your economic situation, basically. But again, like I said, those checks are coming from the government, and the families are vetted. They're working with, a case manager. They've got, different programs in there, like the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is one in which, it's promoting people to go to college, to, get educated, to get jobs. And they've got coaches and things of that nature.
Now, is there any stipulations on qualifying for that outside of income?
Yeah. I mean, A is income, and then as far as who gets a voucher, I mean, there's different. What do you call them? I'm gonna say indicators, but say if you got kids, versus somebody's got 3 kids versus somebody that's single. Yeah. Those are things that can move you up the list faster. If you're a senior, they've got senior living, all kind of stuff.
Is this an ongoing thing forever, or just a time period? Like, for instance, get people back on their feet, or in search of higher paying jobs, things like that?
Great question. It's supposed to be just to get people back on their feet. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Housing authorities all over the country are faced with that because you'll have career people that are in housing. They get there, they get comfortable, and just because though, the conditions are good. And when you look at our Fort Wayne, the properties around here, because the other thing is, housing authorities, they own basically like apartment complex themselves. So in Fort Wayne, you've got like six units six properties that they own. And again, compared to bigger cities and things and stuff that we see on TV, we all do about, Chicago and things, our apartment complexes here, look like regular apartment complexes. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know. The way you know is just because, you're from here and somebody has said so. But, back to your point, no, it's supposed to give you that leg up. You get to working, and then you get off of housing authority. And that's really what the family self-sufficiency program is kind of about, because, when you're working, when you do that, you're in that program. Let's say you came on and your rent was, at $200 because you're only making $400, a month. So if you get a higher paying job and your rent was still at that 200, so once you get a higher paying job, your rent technically should go up. But when you're in that program, that difference in which your rent should go up goes into an escrow account for you. So at the end of you can be on the program for 5 years, but at the end of that program, that money that goes in the escrow account, it becomes yours. Mm-hmm. And I literally signed checks for anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000. People that got it, understood, and stayed in the program.
So when you use the 5-year mark, is that a set limitation on there? Because you mentioned some people do it as kind of like a career thing, right? They're living off it forever.
Correct. But that's what I'm saying. A program like that's designed that we want to get you in, get you working to where you could be on your own. And again, a big push, and I've been gone for 5 years, but, moving to work, there's a lot of programs that they had. So that's exactly it. They were trying to put time constraints, and mm-hmm. you're either going to be working or you're going to be out of housing. But what you run into, it's tough. What do you do? I'm going to put somebody in the street, mm-hmm. or you're going to allow them the chance to, get back on their feet. So it's tough.
So how do you feel about that? With that being some out there, what you would say is abusing the system, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to those that actually need it, because you are put in that tough spot. There's like, you don't want to just kick somebody and their family out, but if they continue to live off of that forever, is there any incentive for them to go out and better their lives?
Yeah, you know what? That's like with anything. You got the good, you got the bad. You got some good apples, you got the bad apples, but you got to think the large majority is about helping people, and that's what you are. You've got some that are going to be out and going to shuck the system, but for the most part, it's about helping folks, and I'm about housing people versus you kick them out, and what we just now you contributing to the homeless population and that issue that we have there. So.
Yeah, which seems to be an increasing thing here in Fort Wayne too.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just me noticing that being downtown more or not, or what those numbers look like.
That's real.
Yeah, Terrence, anything to add to that?
I did want to throw something out there. I know we are on the topic of how we view things have either changed, progressed, or retrogressed, of course. And the person that did come to mind is Ruby Bridges. She is 70 years old. I don't know if you are familiar with the story. There have been several movies that have been produced to depict what she went through as a child integrating into an all-white school.
So for me personally, I'm familiar with the name, but I couldn't recite the story for it. So
So she initially was one of the first African Americans to be integrated into a white school, and of course that was not acceptable at the time. She went through a lot of strife and atrocities, racial slurs, whatever you can think of. They did not like the fact that she would be attending school with white people. So theoretically, just thinking about the fact that she went through that in her childhood, and she's only 70 years old, and it feels like we are retrogressing back to a time period where that's socially acceptable, is eye-opening, because I'm only in my mid-20s. So what does that say for me 50 years down the road? What is it going to look like when I'm 70? What is it going to look like for my nieces and nephews, or my grandchildren, or my great-grandchildren? That is one of the things that weighs on me heavily, is because I'm only, again, in my mid-20s. Mm-hmm. There are people that were alive during the civil rights, that grew up and lived throughout the civil rights movement and fought just for a level playing field. And if it is so easily for that to be wiped away, what does that mean for my future? And what does that mean for other younger African Americans that haven't even had the chance yet? What about those 3 and 4 year olds? What is it going to look like when they're 20, when it's 21, when they want to buy their first house, or they want to buy their first car, or they try to go get their job, when they get rejected from colleges again, or they get rejected from purchasing land in specific areas just because of their skin color. So those are some of the things that I do think about with time. So having Juneteenth is a way for me to just be happy that I'm here and that my people accomplished a lot over the years. And I know for a fact that we are fighters. We are very resilient, and we are going to keep fighting until we get what we deserve.
And to further Terrence's point, Ruby Bridges, her book is one that's on the banned book list. That's one that they're pulling off shelves. That's a divisive book.
Banned by who?
It's one of the divisive books from school system.
Yes.
Yes, it's pulled off. You heard about things that have been pulled back. People aren't allowed to teach Black history in school. You're not allowed to have books on Ruby Bridges, books that talk about slavery.
Acceptable books teaching about sexuality and things like that.
Right? Yes, I'll let you.
From my understanding, yes.
Yes, but that's funny
that
he brought up a
school,
name.
but from what I hear.
And as you heard that story that he just said, and that is exactly it, the story of a young lady and everything that she faced, a little girl in her plight. But that is a divisive book.
Gotcha. So, running up on time here. So, obviously, we talked mainly on the show about Juneteenth, and obviously a very important subject to talk about. But we also have the financial literacy, and obviously, financial literacy in impoverished inner city communities is very important to help lift us up from those days, right? Because you weren't always getting that same experience. How do we tie that into the seminar tonight?
Well, this seminar, I think we're going to be a little more. Actually, we're starting off with the video of an African American entrepreneur. So I guess that'll be our ode to Juneteenth. But again, so that we don't fall into some of those pitfalls, and that the fact that we are afforded a lot more opportunities. That's why we want to teach our young people. We want to educate them on financial literacy. So get your kid out there, your son, your daughter, so that they don't make some of the same mistakes that we made as adults, that they understand how to utilize a lot of the opportunities that are out there for them. So tonight, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, Fort Wayne Urban League, 2135 South Hannah Street. Come on out, get your little meal. Look, see, moms, hey, you don't have to cook tonight. Get your kid out there so they can get something to eat and they can get some knowledge. Terrence will be teaching again today, and we'll have other people within the financial literacy field that'll be out there on deck too to teach your young people. And I also say too, I think I'll get with my bank. My financial people, and I have my $5 bill, my pocket of $5 bills out there. So you answer questions, hey, you could get your $5 bill, as well as you got a sweet too. We have plenty of candy on deck.
Yeah.
So
come get that money and get that knowledge too. If you're not being taught in school, come seek it out for yourself. Right, the information's out there.
Absolutely.
So, gentlemen, thank you. Look forward to, and judging by the rain I hear, I might be able to attend tonight. Baseball practice probably get canceled, and I'll be free for it. So we may see you there. So hope to see all of you there as well. Until then, we are Our Neutral Voices. Peace.